Right now, Angel Encounters is a hot button issue item.
Interesting.
It's being consumed by the younger people.
Yeah, because they are hungry for something
And
supernatural.
I've been amazed. And it's extremely huge in South America, Central America, and Australia, New Zealand.
Welcome back to Kingdom Coffee. We have another fun episode today. We have Robert Bear back with us and Greig Detering. You've seen him several times. We're just continuing to flow with Holy Spirit, and we really felt, well, Greig specifically really felt that God is really highlighting just angelic encounters. And Robert was also sharing how much people are just hungering for that, the real supernatural. Like they're looking, they know there's got to be something more than what we see in just natural, normal life. And oftentimes we know that they get caught up in the wrong side of the supernatural, but we just want to shed light on the amazing encounters you can have with God. And I'm going to start with Greig, who was an engineer since until 2000, and God had a prophetic call in his life that he couldn't deny, couldn't run from, couldn't hide from. God's good at that, like Jonah. Chased him down, and he just started walking in that ever since. And then he had different people come alongside, and you began to form different ministries, and he is a prophet to the nations. And he also has a heart for Oregon, which makes me happy because I have a heart for Oregon, and we are excited about what God is doing in the Pacific Northwest and the rest of the world. But we're a little biased because this is our state. Anyways, Greig, go ahead and share how you first met Robert Bear.
Okay. Well, I'll say one thing real quick. I was just at the state capitol 2 days ago.
Oh,
I haven't been there in 58 years since my grandfather was the Lynn County state representative. So I was talking to Darren Harbeck, the Lane County representative, and me and some other people were praying over him and speaking, words into and prophesying exactly what you're saying about Oregon. That the Lord's got amazing plans for Oregon.
Yes, he does.
And it's incredible that we're seeing all the prophetic ministry being so expanded out of Oregon. It was prophesied many years ago, and most people thought, how's that going to happen? And now truly Oregon is a leader in the prophetic ministry in the nation. So anyway, I'll mention how this was the most supernatural encounter of anybody I've ever had that I'm still in contact and working with, actually more and more. Robert Bear, it's been an incredible experience, blessing for me to have him in my life. Clear back in December of 2010, I knew it was time to come up for, some different things. And one of them was just vacation time. It's a great time to come up, do some skiing and all that kind of stuff. So because of the way the Lord has really led me about finding out exactly when I'm supposed to fly up, what seats I'm supposed to sit in, all those things to do with transportation and travel, I've gotten really so much so that I'm probably over obsessive about finding out exactly which flight, exactly what seat, if I have a choice, to fly on. And this time it was like incredibly strong that I was supposed to book seat 17A up to Oregon this time.
So specific.
It was so specific that I just knew I had to book 17A. And then I asked him, well, on the way back, and it was like 17A. So I just booked 17A there and back.
Nice.
And I don't think I've ever done that one before, where both ways is like just booked a particular seat, the same seat, because I wasn't sure, is it for there or for back?
Yeah.
So I fly up here. Nothing happened out of the ordinary on the trip up. But as I was heading back to Phoenix, Arizona, which is really my home base now, I sat down in 17A, and the plane was starting to fill up, and this guy comes walking along, and I'm sitting next to the window, 17A.
Waiting for your divine appointment.
Yes, and then Robert Bear just stares a little bit, and then he like eventually sat down. And now and nobody was sitting in between us. Well, I was thinking, okay, is this a guy I'm supposed to maybe talk to? Well, is this why I'm sitting in 17A? And it wasn't until we were entering Phoenix airspace, probably 15 minutes from landing, that I think he asked me the question.
I did. I asked you about the book you were reading.
You know,
I don't remember the title, but it piqued my interest.
I don't remember the book either right now, but
it wasn't about the book.
But it was, yeah. But it was a Christian, you call it charismatic book about some wild things that probably most of the body of Christ even wouldn't even be into reading. But I was reading it, and then the conversation led, why are you reading that, and what are you doing, and all those kind of things. And the more he listened, I think the more he thought, this guy's kind of wacky. With all the stuff he's saying he's experiencing and seeing, really supernatural kind of things. And I didn't realize how much it wasn't for me to lead him to the Lord like it usually is.
I had a bad experience in 2009 where I actually died in an airplane and was revived. So this was my first flight in an airplane, and I probably acted a little nervous.
You think?
Anxiety.
Totally understandable.
And I think that's why we started talking a little bit.
Okay.
I think I mentioned that to him.
Wow.
And the conversation just kind of evolved from that point. So I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's good. That's what I want to hear your point of view. But yeah, that's what he seemed. You seemed a little hesitant.
I was
and then after I heard the story, after I heard the story down the road, it's like, no wonder.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. In fact, you wouldn't even fly on the airline that you.
Or go into Sky Harbor. I wouldn't fly it because I passed away in Sky Harbor. Yeah. So we were on an Allegiant flight that went to Mesa, I think.
Right. It's the other airport in the Phoenix area.
I couldn't
commercial airport.
And that flight I booked that day, that seat was arbitrarily given to me. And
arbitrarily.
And he's right. The plane was just about filled, except we had a space between us. So it was kind of a bizarre set of circumstances.
Yeah. So the conversation's going, and he's convinced enough that I'm crazy enough that he can tell his story too of what happened to him when all this went on.
You interrogated me, Greg. Tell the truth.
Well, once I found out, and you just told me the little piece of the story, I was determined to get all I could out of you. And I'm like, okay, this must be so I can learn all this stuff from this guy and all that happens when he's in another place. So long story short is we've been in contact ever since. But in the plane I did, because as you mentioned, my ministry is more as a prophetic minister to wherever the Lord leads me in the world to help the church see the next thing mainly that we need to be focusing on, really, which is getting us back to the original thing. And I just turned, and this is how the Lord works. He just makes you say some things that at the time you like, why am I saying this? But it's like, it's so clear. I said, he's going to use you as a prophet to the nations. You're going to be speaking to people in many different countries. And what was your perspective when I said that?
What'd you think of that?
I was blown away, but he followed me off the plane to baggage claim and
good job.
Asked me for my contact information, which I gave him.
Nice.
And it wasn't one of those 8675309 things, Jenny stuff. I gave him my actual number.
Yeah.
But
that's fun.
That's what happened.
Wow.
He called me when I got back home to Oregon. And it started.
And the rest is history.
And
as
that's amazing.
He's been on many different medias around the world and speaking to how many 105 nations up to at this point. And at that point,
so cool.
He hadn't told anybody this story except a little bit of the nurse.
No.
When he came back after his experience.
Wow.
True.
Yeah, I've heard that often, that people that have these wild experiences, it's almost so sacred and confusing, and you don't want to be called crazy, and they just
That's the
go
main
inward.
thing. And I had several friends that were policemen. We were policemen together.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have thought I was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I never told anybody.
Right.
It's kind of strange. I get calls from them now because they've seen me on television or, how come you never told me?
Yeah.
Because you would have thought I was crazy. Well, maybe a little.
Wow.
He's been on several television specials
amazing
since that day.
So, Robert, did you have a story that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I'm glad we're having this session today to talk about angel encounters, because it's something that's I've basically started to talk about. And actually, I talked to Greig and Robert Johnson about this, whether they thought it would be a good topic to bring up.
Yes.
And I decided to do it, and I've been doing it for the last couple months, and it's been very well received in the different countries I've spoke. But this particular situation I'm going to talk about occurred in 2022, which is a relatively new one.
Yeah.
And I had been helping a friend who had terminal cancer. He was actually a great musician, played like 15 different instruments, and we were totally different. I'd been a policeman. He'd been just the exact opposite. And we just, he was married to my cousin, and my cousin passed, so I got to be real close with him. And I admired him for the way he took care of my cousin when she was terminally ill. And he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I told him he had nobody else to help him. I said, I'll be glad to help you.
Wow.
And I would pick him up sometimes when he had chemotherapy, take him up to my place in Oregon and help him out because he was sick.
Wow.
And take him back because he'd have to have the chemo again.
Yeah.
And it was a situation where it just was, it was rough. It was rough for him. It was actually a little rough for me too. I watched him go downhill.
Exactly. That would
be
very hard.
He finally was down in the Bay Area where he was from. He was from the Napa Valley. And he caught COVID.
Oh.
So they put him in a hospital, and I could not see him.
Oh, yeah.
But he passed away, and that's another story that I'll talk about at some point in time. We're going to talk about angels today.
Okay.
But that would be a Jesus encounter. But this is about angels, and I got a call from the executor of the estate, who said I needed to come down and pick up some of the things that David had left for me in the will. And I said, well, what is it? And he goes, his guns. And I thought, well, okay. And I'd gone shooting with him a couple times, but it was just like a 38 caliber or a 357. I thought, well, there must be a couple guns. And I said, can I come down in a couple weeks? And they said, we want you to come down now. And I had just about a couple weeks before this had an encounter where I was a victim of a carjacking. And it was not a very pleasant experience for me. And that's another story too. But I
picked the wrong guy to carjack.
This has something to do with what I'm about to talk about.
Yeah.
So I saw the weather forecast. It was snowing through Ashland and Mount Shasta and places like that. Well, I better take my truck. It's a 4-wheel drive. And I thought I was just going to pick up a couple of handguns and that'll be it. And take care of any arrangements that have to be made.
Yeah.
I got down there and he had an arsenal.
Oh, no.
I thought, oh my goodness, he's been holding out on me. So
oh, man.
I picked them all up. I got in my truck, and I thought, oh, if I get stopped by the police, they're going to think I'm Jeffrey Dahmer or something like that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So
could be a problem.
So I started back up Interstate 5, which runs through the middle of California up to Oregon,
right,
and all the way to the state of Washington, and it was snowing really bad. I mean, to the point where, as a former California highway patrolman, I kind of wondered why the road was still open.
Yeah,
And it was really heavy. And I got to this place called Weed, California. And there's a truck plaza there.
Okay.
So I was hungry and I had to use the restroom. So I thought, I'm going to go in there and just walk around a little bit. I parked there and I noticed someone sitting on the sidewalk at the entrance to the door that you walk into to get into the store area.
Right.
And he looked like he was homeless. And it was really cold out. And I mean, it was snowing like a banshee. It was snowing that bad.
Yeah. That's random.
I saw him
sitting there.
And we kind of nodded heads at one another. And I got into the plaza and used the restroom. And I thought, I'm hungry. I thought, I'm going to get whatever they have here. They had just 2 pieces of pizza left. And I said,
good healthy dinner.
I'll take the 2 pieces of pizza, but could you put one in a container and one in another container? And I got a couple of waters.
Nice.
And I was wondering, I bet that guy hasn't ate for a while. So as I'm leaving the store, he's there, but there's somebody else talking to him. And I asked him, I said, how long has it been since you've ate anything?
Yeah.
He says, it's been quite a while. And I said, well, here, I got this pizza for you, and here's a water, and his friend was there. I know who the friend was.
Yeah.
But I said, here, you can have this piece and this water. And all of a sudden, he looked up at me, and his eyes were so piercing. I thought, this is not normal.
It's the
and
eyes
he asked
again.
me a question. Are you going to Oregon? I had just had that carjacking incident. I had all those guns in my truck.
Oh my gosh.
I lied and I said no. And I really didn't want anybody else in the truck.
Yeah.
And I didn't want somebody that may have a cell phone and calls 911.
Yeah.
I'm riding with somebody that he's got some issues here. But anyways, there was no one on the road. It was snowing that bad. Nobody passed me.
Wow.
It was crazy for me to even be on the road, but I decided to go over Ashland and I came down. I still didn't have a car pass me. Didn't even come up close to a car.
Wow.
It was just me and the road.
Weird.
And snow. And it was a lot of snow.
Surreal.
And I kept thinking, why is this road still open?
Yeah.
I got all the way to Grants Pass and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm 77 years old. It's crazy for me to try and push on through.
Yeah.
And of course, I wasn't 77 then. I would have been 73. But I went ahead and pulled over, and I saw this motel. I thought, I'm going to see if they've, still had the vacancy sign out. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to get a room. And I guess I'm going to have to take all the guns and bring them in. And so I pulled into an area, a parking spot that was just for registering for a room.
Oh, okay.
And there was a perimeter fence that was right in front of the parking spot. I looked up and there was that guy.
Oh my goodness.
There is no way he could have made it there before me. I had not stopped. I had not passed anybody. No one passed me.
Wow.
I started to get out of the truck and he just looked at me and he pointed at me and kind of smiled.
Oh my goodness.
He caught me in a lie. I said, I am so sorry. And he disappeared.
Oh my goodness.
I drove around for 10 minutes thinking, well, maybe he's still around here. Maybe that's just a human being.
So wait, he disappeared.
He disappeared.
As in you're staring at him and poof.
He just disappeared.
Wow. He must have wondered, am I hallucinating? Maybe I drove too long.
I'll tell you what, I did not get a room. Wow. I got in my truck and I drove all the way to Newport, Oregon. Immediately, if not sooner. I mean, it was,
wow.
That was an angel.
Yes, absolutely.
And he caught me in a lie, and
the fear of the Lord came over you. And it was Godspeed from that point.
I stayed away.
I might have been able to justify it to myself, but
oh wow.
I felt like maybe I was set up, but I don't think so.
No. God set up. So why do you think he was, did you get any clarity on like why he was asking if you were going to Oregon or?
No.
Well, he knows about Oregon. God knows about Oregon. That's a good part.
No doubt about it.
No question.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
That actually happened.
I believe
2022.
That is incredible. And it's so interesting too. Like there's a lot of mystery in that. Did God ever bring any more clarity later about why that incident or just what he was trying to show you?
I had some issues come up where I told the truth and figured that they were personal of nature.
Mm-hmm.
I just told the truth, and I thought I'm going to take whatever the consequences are, and I kind of equated that with being caught in a lie.
Okay.
Because I probably could have said some things that weren't accurate. That probably would have helped me out.
Right.
And I just decided to
be honest and face that. Wow.
And I know from my life review, from passing and being in front of a higher power, there's nothing but truth. That's all there is truth. You see your life unfold. And I've mentioned in the last segment that we talked about how it was a reckoning for me. I don't know whether I'll have to go through another life review again when I pass, but I don't want to be put in a situation where I've misled or I lied or I've done something
that definitely
intentionally wrong.
Wow.
And so that's what I got from this.
Okay. That does make a lot of sense, and that definitely would put the fear of God in you.
I have that fear.
And I just think it's cool too, and interesting that you see this angel, and when he points at you, the first thing you think of is, I lied to an angel. I lied to God.
That's the only interaction I had with him.
Yeah, I'm definitely convicted now.
Right? God cares about our heart and the integrity and truth. That's really powerful. I think that in itself is a very powerful message. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Greig, were you going to share? You had an angel encounter yourself,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I had the most amazing angel encounter I've ever had.
Wow.
So I'll get into it and try to keep it as short as possible.
Okay. But also, it's okay. Like, sometimes it's worth it with, God encounters that it's worth it to stick around. So don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss this story.
So this is clear back when after I really submitted my life to the Lord in 1997, It was 3 years later, and I went from one end to another, just being obsessed with finding more and more about God when I realized He was real. Even though I grew up in that environment, but and I told Him I was willing to do whatever, and it became obvious in 2000 by incredible signs that I won't get into all those things, that He was sending me out, and in the end, it was like He's sending me out to the nation of El Salvador, to a specific town. Wow. I have no connections. I have no schooling. I have no credentials. No church that's backing me and doing it. But it was so clear that I had to go. From a practical perspective, even though I had a little basic Spanish that I learned after college, I still didn't consider myself. At that time, I thought, well, I'm called to be an evangelist, because that was one of the threefold ministry that was allowed back then. But now things have expanded more into the fivefold. So the Lord had me really more for the prophetic side. I just didn't realize it at that time. But I'm thinking, how can I be an evangelist in a place where I can't even speak the language?
Yeah.
But this is it's an incredible testimony from beginning to end. But the first guy that I led to the Lord after I was saved, first man that I led to the Lord, he looks more Northern European than I do. I had no idea he spoke Spanish. He came to me about 3 weeks before I'm supposed to leave for this trip on the 1st of January and says, I think I'm supposed to go with you. And I said, you speak any Spanish? And he said, oh yeah, I'm fluent. I grew up speaking Spanish.
Awesome.
Because my mom speaks Spanish.
Okay.
She's from Mexico. Didn't know that. So anyway, on the 1st of December in the year of 2000, we fly down to San Salvador, El Salvador, not knowing anything except the city that I saw glowing on the map that I'm supposed to go to.
Wow, that's faith.
Yeah, and at this point, I could tell more details. I won't get into that right now. That why I was pretty much like assuming I was going to die anyway. So it's like, might as well do whatever God wants me to do. So,
all in.
So I was all in. And of course, the Lord honors our faith above all.
Yeah.
Our trust in Him. Even though we usually don't have the whole picture, I had enough to know that I'm supposed to at least try to get down there and go to this city, and I don't know anything after that, what's going to happen. But we go down there to San Salvador, and the very next day, we head out in a bus, in a taxi, to this smaller town. It's still a town of about close to 100,000 people that I knew I was supposed to go to. And I had all these different visions that I'd seen, like of a city on this hill. I saw even a church that looked more like a mosque.
Wow.
As we came into this city, I'm seeing we're going up a hill. The big Catholic church in the center of town looked more like a mosque than it did any church that I'd seen before.
That's helpful when you've gone out not knowing.
Yeah, so I go into this town with Ed. He's the one that went with me, and we spent the day just going around trying to follow the Lord. And I was getting real clarity on where we should walk. We're just having all kinds of supernatural things happening. But I knew, okay, now we didn't find a place to stay, and I figured for sure there'd be a hotel or something there. In the town of almost 100,000, they said there's no hotels here.
Oh no!
You're going to have to go to Santa Ana.
Oh no!
So we go hop on a bus that's going to Santa Ana, which is the second largest city in El Salvador. Had no idea how dangerous it was when we went, but we hop on a bus with our giant backpacks that has everything that we brought with us, and we're dropped off in Santa Ana. The name of a bus stop. It's just a sea of people.
Wow.
A sea of people, and we stuck out like sore thumbs. These big, tall, not big, tall, but relative to them, tall, white guys.
Right.
And you didn't see any of that there. Because at the time, it was such a dangerous place. So you didn't see any Americans hanging out down in, especially Santa Ana. But so we get out of this bus. We're walking through a sea of people. And there's people on other buses going, you need to get out of here. You're going to get your necks cut. I mean, it was like people were trying to warn us we're in great danger. We shouldn't even be there. And
that's a little unnerving.
And my friend, who, here I'm being led by the Lord, thinking, whatever, Lord, you're going to protect me. At least I hope you are. And my friend is with me, and he's a lot more nervous because he just put all his trust in me, assuming I was hearing correctly from God. We start walking through the crowd. Like I said, we're getting these warnings. He's starting to get real nervous. And so he says, where are we going? And I, at the same time, felt like I'm supposed to stop right here. I'm just supposed to stop for a minute. I'm like, Lord, what are we doing? Where are we supposed to be going? We're trying to get to a hotel. I have no idea what direction to go or anything. And as soon as I stop, I'm looking straight forward, and I see this woman walking straight towards me out of the crowd. She's just staring at me. She's not looking anywhere else. She's just coming straight towards me. And she walks up and says, what do you need? And I said, well, we need to find a hotel. And she goes, what kind of hotel? I said, any hotel. And she just immediately turns around and says, follow me. Now, I will tell you, this person, it looked like everything in her body. She looked very different from everybody else around there.
And I was going to say, is she speaking English?
She's speaking perfect English with no accent at all, which I never heard the entire time I was in El Salvador from beginning to end.
Wow.
But on this very first day in the town of Santa Ana, this perfect English-speaking person comes up to me and says that and says, follow me. Well, I'm like, okay. So I'll just start following her because I got nothing better to do. And I really did feel like, okay, this is the Lord, because he told me to stop, and here's this person trying to help me and get what I really need.
Right.
So we're walking through this crowd more, and we're starting to get a little far further out now. And Ed justifiably was saying, where are we going? We don't know where she's taking us.
We're following her.
And I have a good feeling about it all, but he doesn't really.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, and so he was really worried and wanted to stop. Where are we going? Yeah. This person turns around the instant he said that and goes, wait here. Now I want to say this also, that we were trying to talk to her as she was leading us, but she would never respond. Which actually made you a little more wary in a way. But it's like, no matter how fast we walked, she always was a little bit ahead of us. But she never even looked back once. She just knew she needed to take you. Yeah. She knew we were back there. But as soon as we were getting worried, and she didn't know it, but all of a sudden the Lord knew we were. She stops and says, wait here. She goes to the sea of people, comes back through a sea of people with a taxi. Wow. And she said, get in. He'll take you where you need to go.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
And I'm kind of like in awe, like how did this all happen? We're in massive danger. Now she's telling us here's the taxi, and still it's a little bit. Right. Is this really a good taxi? Is it going to take us in a good place? But I was so assured by the way she talked to me. And I will tell you, the things she was wearing were all brand new. Everything she was wearing was brand new. I remember everything she was wearing, and I don't remember what shirt people's wearing, what color it is even. Right. I remembered everything about her, and she had a necklace on. It's with a big medallion that says, "Only God can judge you."
Wow, that is very unusual.
In English.
Only God can judge you.
Right.
Interesting.
So Ed and I are standing there. I said, is there anything we can do? And she's like, never responded. She just goes, I said, well, thank you very much. And she just kind of a little smirk on her face. A little knowing smirk. Wow. We hop in the vehicle. the taxi. He takes us to a hotel. It was the perfect place that actually there were billboards along the way that I knew God was trying to say, this is the place you want to go to. He took us to that place.
That's amazing.
But the most incredible part about it is the fact that when we got to the hotel, we didn't remember. It's like it was all blanked from our mind.
Really?
And I can tell you the reason it was blank from our mind is because every day we were doing incredible things, having to be really focused on listening to what God was doing. So he didn't want us just talking about how this amazing rescue happened for us on the first day. I mean, this is my speculation.
Okay.
I never heard this from the Lord. But for 5 days, we never even talked about this once. I'll tell you, from the time we got there, Ed, my friend, who wasn't quite as serious about doing what we were doing as I was, understandably. He was just there to help me out. But, you know, he saw that there was these big, amazing pyramids in this town near Santa Ana. And he says, we got to go to those. I'm like, Ed, we are here to work. The Lord worked 6 days and then he rested. We've only been here in 4 days. So, you know, we got to stay focused and just do what the Lord wants us to do. So we stayed at the hotel. We went different places every day that the Lord was directing us to go. And then on the 4th day, by accident, out of all these different routes, we happened to hop on the bus that goes to the pyramids.
Of course.
Lord was teaching me things too.
Yes.
And he's taught me ever since, and he still is. But
nice.
But so the very next day, so we actually then found a way to get back to our hotel, even though we went way out away and it eventually ended up this pyramid, but we're not supposed to be here. We're supposed to be back. So we came back, and the next day the Lord says, I want you to go to the pyramids. I mean, it was like that clear. So he was caring about Ed too. You know,
yes.
Let's give him
Ed
a little.
was learning to hear from the Lord too.
Yeah, exactly. So the very day after that, we actually knew exactly what bus to take, where it was, all that, because we'd accidentally got on it. So we go to these pyramids. These are incredible restored pyramids. And the amazing part is we go start walking up to the very top of these pyramids with their backpacks, and nobody's there. I mean, it was like surreal that nobody was there. So we're at the very top of these pyramids.
Okay.
He's on one side of the tip, I'm on the other side, and we both, lay our heads back and fall asleep at the time.
Time to rest.
We were pretty burnt out for sure. Yeah, but it was like the Lord knocked us out or something.
Interesting. Right. That's bizarre. You don't usually get to the...
So I can't remember how long we slept, but it was a while. And then we both woke up at the same time. These white doves flew over the top of us. And we immediately, it's like all this came back to us from what happened the first day. And we turned to each other and I said, that was an angel. And he said, you're right, that was an angel. Because we knew what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And
oh my goodness.
So the Lord, he knew that we'd gone through all these dangerous experiences and learned more and more why nobody else is visiting this area, because it was so dangerous at the time. And he just wanted to let us know, see, I'm here to protect you.
Oh.
You're doing this crazy stuff in this dangerous place, but I'm here to protect you.
So good.
And I will never forget everything about this woman. But she, to go back to the woman, she was tall, slender. I would say even kind of anthropomorphic. I would say like she's a very handsome woman. I'll just put it that way. And she never told the name. She never asked anything except what we needed to tell her in order that she would do that for us. And we never met anybody that could speak any broken English at all, that didn't want to know everything about us and wouldn't leave us alone. So we tried to avoid anybody that did speak any Spanish because they all wanted to just chat. She was completely the opposite. Like she already knew everything.
Amazing. Yeah, a couple things stand out about that. Number one, angels can look like female too. They're not all male looking. And then just that that it stands out when you have an encounter with God. There is just something different. It says, beware lest you entertain angels.
Exactly.
But it feels like there's always a clue if you're paying attention, and it just sticks with you differently, like you said, than if you just met a neat person that, totally. You wouldn't exactly remember everything they were wearing that day and all the things. So
yeah, and speaking of the female part, there's no way we would have followed any man.
Yes,
anywhere.
That's a good point. That was another thought I had.
Right.
Is it's a good thing she was a woman, so you could safely follow her, thinking maybe she wants to feed us. Maybe she sees we look like these lost white people.
Totally. And speaking of the eyes, we've talked about, and we will continue to talk about, she had sunglasses on, so I couldn't see her eyes.
Interesting.
Like I said, and all her clothes were brand new, so we wouldn't think, who is this poor person that's trying to rip us off or whatever. So all these little pieces were put in place to give us enough comfort to follow her and do what she told us to do.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when we got into the cab, I immediately looked up and she was gone. Another sign, angelic sign.
Yes.
But yeah, it was.
And I've
incredible.
noticed most angelic encounters, and I know you've talked to a lot of people who have had angelic encounters. Isn't it common that there's few words? They don't usually give you this whole breakdown. Let's chat. Let's have this discussion. It's usually a few direct words that just prick your heart, and you're like, okay, I'm listening. I'm going to pay attention.
Yeah, God called us to be the preachers, the teachers, the explainers. Right. The angels just come to give short messages.
Yeah,
throughout the Bible.
Yes. And I'm looking on my notepad here, James 1:5. It says, if you want to know what God wants you to do, ask him, and he will gladly tell you. There you have it. I think that's a great note to end on. So I really hope you guys enjoyed that. This was incredible. Thank you so much for joining me today. And
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.
More to come. Have a lovely day.